Oh, Annie. Ooh, you sent me yet another message. I can tell we're going to be best friends. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're sending me prayers for Jesus, and you're mad at me. You appreciate what I say. You laugh at what I say. See, best friends. But I did want to thank you for this. I do appreciate the reference information, so I did go and look it up. And this may be obvious, but this is from the House Oversight Committee in Congress, and that is a committee run by Republican James Comer. So I used another source as well. Um, always want to make sure we're bringing in nonpartisan information. So I also went and I saw a review of this same hearing, this one you're pointing to right here, from the Child Welfare League of America. And they're a nonpartisan organization involved in advocacy and protecting children. So, they have no irons in the fire and no axe to grind. So they're pretty good for reporting back. So what they said was slightly different than what the House Oversight Committee said, which was it's all Biden's fault. That's what they said. But what they said to the Child Welfare League is that it's actually a little bit more complicated. Surprise, surprise. So they did talk about this same hearing that you are referencing here, where they brought in the director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is that ORR thing that this mentions. And they asked her this question: how are these kids not being tracked once they're put into placements? And she said, because I lose custodial authority over these children once they're put into sponsorships. And then they said, well, how come the sponsors aren't being properly vetted? And she said, that is because we are having a lot of problems finding sponsors, number one, and then also waiting until we can find ideal care. And so we had, unfortunately, had some shortcuts because we were just having kids waiting way too long for a sponsorship placement. And then they asked, okay, but then what about when it's like a crappy placement, or it's some horrible person? Like, how do you get the kids back if you find out that there's some abuse happening, or they're not being treated as they should as unaccompanied alien children? And she said, I can't do a thing. Sponsors are not required by law to report back what happens to those children once they are placed, and I do not have any law enforcement powers to remove children from sponsorships. And that may not be something that they liked hearing on the House Oversight Committee, but those are the laws on the books. They're the laws that represent how incredibly broken the immigration system is and how desperately it needs legislative reform. And that still hasn't been happening. And now the question becomes why? Well, I've already told you what I think. I think the Dems are spineless and the Republicans are shameless. I do think that some of the more progressive Democrats who are genuinely concerned about this do keep trying to say, we need legislation, we need to fix this system, we need to make sure that the laws are fixed so that a child that's put into a placement can be tracked and will be tracked. We need to have a law that says that sponsors have to report back about the status of the children at every so often, just like we have for foster care children in America. And even that's not great, but we know some of the things we should do because we at least have some plans. They should have case managers who come out there and see how they're doing. Yes, all that stuff should happen. That should be the law. It isn't. And so this this director, this woman, basically said, my hands are tied. I cannot do anything that the law does not allow, and it's not easy. And so nobody wants children to be hurt. I mean, people don't take this job because it's going to make them rich or powerful. I mean, they're managing immigrant children. They do it because, in my opinion, it's something they feel called to. Now, if you have a bad director, well, you need to go and fix that by getting rid of that director and appointing another. But what the Child Welfare League of America pointed out is that these rules stink, but they are the rules on the books. And until they're changed, people like the director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement don't have any other way to deal with these children. So they're doing the best they can with a bad set of tools. I mean, look, if you gave me blunted saws and only gave me Phillips head screwdrivers and I only had like one kind of power tool to use, I could probably cobble together something. But even if I'm a talented construction worker, there's but so much I can do without the proper tools. Now, I think they're put people in place who do try. I mean, I don't see any reason to assume that they're not, but it's a bad system. And as a person who works in a similar sort of role in terms of not federal government, but I do work in other types of government or government adjacent types of work, and I've worked in nonprofit settings, you're always dealing with stupid rules, and you're always dealing with rules that are essentially half created by some dork with a whiteboard who thinks they know better than the people that are in the trenches. But you're stuck with it because although you want to do good things in the world, you have no power outside of what has been given to you. And this is the problem. We need to empower these agencies that are out there supposed to be protecting the most vulnerable people, asylum seekers and children, etc. And until we get that, there's going to continue to be problems. There's going to continue to be abuses. There's going to continue to be terrible tragedies like we've already seen. So I think that you and I, best friend, would agree this situation is awful. Congress has to fix it. That is the only sustainable way. Because when a president writes an executive direct action, as soon as another president comes in, or as soon as they put it in a court and run it through the injunction process, because somebody gets a burr in their saddle about the language or the details, that executive action's out the door. Some of my very first posts on this site were about this very issue. Okay. Food for thought.